Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to take a look at Season 1, Episode 3 of The Bad Batch, Replacements. My spoiler-free review is... Ouch! Ouch! And ouch! This episode is an odd mix of the bold and the utterly conservative. There are tropes as old as animation and beyond. There is as old as dirt horse girl trope, of course, and the very, very, very classically Disney plot twist. And because you can't see them, the term plot twist has big old quotation marks around it. But remarkably, the tired old tropes don't feel clunky or awkward, and they really seem enhanced by the more brutal elements of this episode. This might be because the writers didn't try to make the plot twists the central point of the plot, they just used them as a tasteful window dressing for the story. This also might be because we are distracted by the horrific human rights violations that go on in the other plot line. Hard to say. But now I am about to get into spoilers, so I want you to wipe the automotive grease off your hands and click away. While you are away, go check out Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a book of human absurdity, Monty Python meets Star Trek, in this collection of short science fiction stories. Or, if you want to go break your heart, check out Dying Embers, Dragons, Aliens, and Things That Go Boom in the Night. Back to the Bad Batch. We take up the story of the escaped clones as their damaged ship limps away from the battle at the planet Seleucamide. Now, this opening scene. These writers really believe that old bit of advice about everything must be doing 3 things at least in a story, because this opening scene sets up a lot. It sets up the cover for the fact that Wrecker's chip is malfunctioning and is probably going to put his life in danger. It sets up the fact that Wrecker is far more than the brute strength of the team. There is heart and a brain to him. He's just never had the need to display them before Omega came along. It sets up how precocious Omega is, and how very much she is still a child, still very helpless and afraid in many situations. It sets up the heartbreak as the clones prepare themselves to eventually face the fact that even if his actions aren't his fault, Crosshairs is still going to do horrible things, is doing horrible things. And they're all going to have to live with the consequences of that. There is just as much here, and it is so well presented. The art and animation are beautiful. This is top-tier animation, and I could honestly watch for that alone, but the real beauty of this episode is the character development for Omega. See, Omega is the child appeal character, a character that was hated for generations, looking at you, Wesley Crusher, but this hate comes for a reason. The child appeal character is usually poorly written. They are usually tacked in on a poorly calculated attempt to add a lucrative demographic to the show's audience, namely kids who can beg their parents for action figures. Because of this, very little thought is given to writing a legitimate reason for the child to be there. Ultimately, there is usually no reason at all for the kid to be involved in the series, they just are. The child is usually poorly written on top of that, so that the child is a mental jar to anyone who knows how children really act. The child often displays skills and abilities that cause a violent jar to the suspensions of disbelief. If the child acts naturally, then their natural uselessness in the situation can also become a problem. In Omega, the writers have managed to avoid every one of these pitfalls. Omega has a real reason for being there. We saw Jango Fett die years ago. This was after the canon had clearly established that his continued presence was needed to provide new genetic material for the clones. Figure that one out on your own. Canon further established that that was because the genetic material needed to be replaced over time, making an unmodified female clone of Jango from the last remnants of his genetic code, probably several years ago before it had degraded, would have solved this problem. As I mentioned before, making a genetic human female from a genetic human male would be fairly easy compared to all the other genetic work the Kaminoans were doing. Cut out the Y chromosome, replace it with an exact copy of the existing X chromosome. Now you have a clone who can produce healthy ova, or human eggs. Granted, each ova only has half of the codes you need to continue your cloning process, but all you would need would be to wait for a few extra to make sure you got all the relevant genes. So the presence of a younger girl is not only reasonable, but something that the fandom had been kind of expecting, because it logically follows the course of the story so far. On a side note, something the Kaminoans said bugged me. The Bad Batch were genetically altered clones. Their material should not be worth retaining if you're trying to clone more clones. It's a copy of a defective copy, basically. Omega, I can see being a clone necessary to bring her back for her genetics, but not the Bad Batch. So Unless they are trying to clone more Bad Batchers, but that doesn't quite make sense. But anyway, the thing that she said was the clones, plural, who we need for the experiment will be difficult to get back. She didn't say the Bad Batch. She didn't say clone singular. And she didn't specify the Bad Batch, which makes me think they might be setting us up for a plot twist where the clones that have the relevant genetic material are not the Bad Batch. Because after she says that, the other guy says they are the property of the Kaminoans. Now, I think she might be referring not to the Bad Batch, not to Omega, but simply to the oldest clones, the clones who were least likely to have been specifically modified, because the younger clones were heavily genetically modified to be more obedient, docile. And one of the things in real life and in shows is that a perfectly obedient soldier is not as useful a soldier, and the Kaminoans are struggling to make the most useful soldiers they can. I think this might be where Cody comes in and how Cody gets out of the clutches of the Empire. Hear me out here. This was not in my script. It literally just occurred to me. But this has been bugging me since she said it. The clones we will need to retrieve the genetic material to make better clones might not be easy to retrieve. And in response to that, her boss says they are the property of Kaminoa. Now, for a clone that has completely gone rogue, laws of property are utterly irrelevant. The laws of property only exist when you are dealing in a legal manner with a legal entity, which the Empire still is, which suggests to me that the clones they want to harvest the genetics from are in the hands of the Empire, not running about lawlessly across the galaxy. And I think this might be how they drag Cody into this. Because Rex has gone rogue. Wolf, we don't know when he went rogue, but he was still communicating with the Empire in Rebels. So it's quite possible that Wolf is still somewhat in the clutches of the Rebels. Cody, Commander Cody, is definitely still in the clutches of the Empire. Wolf is still in the clutches of the Empire, I mean. Gregor, he had gone rogue too. So, Cody, maybe Wolf, but these are older clones who would have had genetics much closer to Jango Fett's. They might even be considered to go after Boba, but again, Boba has gone rogue and there's no legal way to get him. But there are legal means to get Cody and possibly Wolf into their clutches again. And Cody, being as valuable to the Empire as he is as an instructor, might not be easy to get him back. So anyway, that's my theory on why they're looking for Cody. And sorry, that's not in the script for anybody who wants to read the transcript. That literally just occurred to me now. Anyway, where was I? Oh, wow, I really got lost. Okay, clones, genetics. Anyway, so the presence of a younger girl, going back to the beginning, I'm explaining why Omega is such a good character. She's not the typical child insert character. Point one, there's a very logical reason for her to be there. She's refreshing the genetic code. Point two, even if they don't have Omega, okay, she is very well written. She shows all the native innocence, ignorance, and fears of a child. She needs to be comforted. She is, in many ways, a burden on the team. She's susceptible to the emotions of the people around her, and the adults have to react to her to change their behavior to shield her, as we see Wrecker do. And yet, Omega is a cut above the normal child in usefulness. Part of this is her intellect. She's very clever and knows how to use her brain, which this show has already set up, and it pays off well in this episode. However, she's not really overpowered, as we know that she's a clone and was raised on Kamino and therefore has been highly educated and probably optimized for intelligence as well, if she was supposed to be concealed as a medical assistant. So every bit of intelligence she shows is well within the limits we have seen from the clones in this world. Everything about Omega feels natural and smooth. Now, there is something that I feel obligated to point out about the title. This is kind of a completely different track, so we're tangenting away from the clones and their genetics and everything. Okay. At first, I just thought the clones, the title was referring to the fact that the Empire was replacing the clones. But I found a lot of applications for the title. It's a very well-chosen title. But I want you to help me out with this, because I found so many that I'm sure there are more and that I missed a few. But Replacements, that is the title, Replacements. And that is where the last ouch comes in. So, in the order, basically, from least ouchiness to greater ouchiness, the Bad Batch has to find a replacement for the capacitor. Bonus points of the show for actually knowing what a capacitor does and integrating that seamlessly into the way the plot beats interacts with the capacitor. Because even though the Beast completely drained the capacitor, it wasn't useless because it's a capacitor, not a battery. Excellent writing, excellent engineering. The Empire is replacing the Republic. The conscripts are replacing the clones. And the Kaminoans are attempting to replace Jango Fett's genetics with new genetics. Crosshairs is replacing the Bad Batch with his new team. And the last one hurts the worst. The Bad Batch is unconsciously replacing Crosshairs with Omega. Did I miss any replacements? If you can think of anything else that is going to be replaced, leave it in the comment below my video. Now, go check out Humans Are Weird. I Have the Data, a book of human absurdity. Monty Python meets Star Trek in this collection of science fiction short stories. Or if you want to go back, break your heart, check out Dying Embers, Dragons, Aliens, and Things That Go Boom in the Night. You can find merch on DeviantArt and on my new Spring store, which used to be my Teespring store, but they dropped the T for some reason. Go figure. Now, peace out, my wonderful viewers.
The book from author Betty Adams, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, is a humorous look at human behavior through the eyes of aliens. This book is arranged in separate reports or essays, documenting the experiences with humanity through the lens of the aliens who have to interact with them. This anthology of short stories and vignettes from alien points of view highlights some of humanity's quirks we can all relate to. Author Betty Adams captures how strange and interesting humans can really be. This is a fun collection of stories you will really get a kick out of. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, from author Betty Adams. Order your copy right now on Amazon.